Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this chance to contribute to this very important motion. Honorable Speaker, on the onset, first of all, I want to dissuade the argument that we always have that other countries like Japan and the US has a higher percentage of debt to GDP ratio. It is misplaced, Honorable Speaker, because when we talk about debt, what is reported is what is called gross debt. But there are countries that are both lenders and borrowers. For example, when you bring an argument about Japan having over 200% debt to GDP ratio, Honorable Speaker, the consideration must be that Japan is actually the #1 lender of the US economy. And therefore, when you net off all that, then the arithmetic stage. Honorable Speaker, the second thing is the cost. In some years, Japan actually had from 2010 up to 2020, in some years, Japan 10-year board was actually attracting negative interest rate, Honorable Speaker, that they were borrowing at below zero. And Honorable Speaker, also, that discounts the fact that we cannot compare economies which are not homogeneous, Honorable Speaker, when we meet, we need to make a point. The other thing, Honorable Speaker, now going to the issue, is that I commend the committee and the recommendations. I have listened to the chair in terms of the recommendations of the committee, and I wish the government was actually listening to some of the recommendations made by the reports of this House, because a lot could have been arrested. Honorable Speaker, painting a picture on where we are, President Kibaki took our economy when our national debt, public debt, was around 1.2 trillion Kenya shillings. But actually 600 billion Kenya shillings, sorry. By the time he left, it was around 1.7 to 1.8 trillion Kenya shillings. Meaning the entire 10-year tenure of President Mwai Kibaki, our country borrowed a net of 1.2 trillion Kenya shillings with all that we saw in terms of economic development. President Uhuru Kenyatta, Honorable Speaker, of course with the Deputy President, who is the current President, took the debt from the then 1.7 trillion, Honorable Speaker, to around 8.7 trillion in 10 years, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, now this administration, in the 3 years and some months that has been there, the debt has grown from 8.7 trillion Kenya shillings to over 12.5 trillion Kenya shillings. Meaning we are borrowing over 1.2 trillion Kenya shillings per annum, Honorable Speaker, on the regular book. There are other loans that we already borrowed outside of the main book. It means, therefore, Honorable Speaker, that Kenya currently is borrowing over 4 billion Kenya shillings every single day. That we are here on a Thursday, Honorable Speaker, by the close of this Thursday, Kenya will have borrowed approximately 4 billion Kenya shillings every single day. And Honorable Speaker, this money is not part of what we see with our eyes, what is growth. Everything that is happening in the road sector is not part of this loan. It is another odious loan called securitization. Everything happening in the construction of stadiums is actually not part of the 4 billion we are borrowing every day. It is another odious debt called Talanta Board, or Honorable Speaker, the board that was listed recently. Honorable Speaker, anything that is happening in the bombers of Kenya is also not part of the 4 billion Kenya shillings Kenya is borrowing every day. That is another odious debt, Honorable Speaker, where we have given up our tourism fund, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the current debt levels in Kenya, I can dare say facing the cameras, that we are now a Ponzi scheme. And to prove the point, I would challenge the National Treasury to go only 2 months without raising money domestically. We will not be able to even pay the salaries, Honorable Speaker. And this report has actually betrayed the many narratives we hear in political gatherings, where we are told by people wearing suits and ties, oh, we have stabilized the economy. But this report, Honorable Speaker, has torn all those lies bare, that in terms of debt, Kenya is in red. The second thing, Honorable Speaker, I want to highlight, that in the debt management strategy that we have, that we want to borrow as a country 78% domestically and only 22% outside. What is this, Honorable Speaker? This is basically crowding out money that should go into the private sector. But this is the major point, Honorable Speaker. Kenyans need to know the reason why we are heavily borrowing domestically other than foreign. It is because of one reason, Honorable Speaker. We are running away from accountability and responsibility. IMF lets Kenya at around 3% on concessional borrowing. Why would you, in a sane mind, leave money on 3% interest rate and go and borrow money on double digit, Honorable Speaker? How can that happen logically?
Give him being actually given a minute each. So see how you can do, how much you can do. But just for the interest of the chair.